next we have Ethan.
All right. Good morning, everybody. My name is Ethan Jetter. I'm a fourth year medical student at the University of Florida, going to psychiatry. And this is a presentation on rethinking rapport as a clinical skill in psychiatry. So rapport has typically been viewed as this intuitive, naturally arising quality, kind of stemming from empathy, warmth, interpersonal ease. And there's quite a bit of psychiatric literature that emphasizes that rapport is this super important relational quality without really defining it as anything that can be intentional, anything that can be teachable. And what we're kind of proposing here is that this is something teachable, something that could be teachable. And the example I would use is you can look at complex psychiatric populations, such as those that are trauma exposed, those that are effectively unstable, like bipolar patients, and those with personality disorders, like borderline personality disorder patients. And these relationships, whether you even really are thinking about it or not, you are certainly trying to cultivate and sustain rapport and changing the way you communicate with the patient, changing your body language, changing the words you use, changing the way you frame things in order to communicate with this patient because their psychiatric state, they are just different and more complicated to communicate with. And as well, whether you're a psychiatrist or not a psychiatrist, you will still see these patients and you will still do similar things in regards to the way you communicate with them. And when you do this, it's often an active process where you're really thinking about your behaviors and really real time adjusting your behaviors. And because you're thinking about it, it's something that is not necessarily intuitive and something that you thus could teach. So if you start to bridge this out from an ethical perspective, this means that as clinicians, we certainly have a responsibility to preserve our patients' emotions and prevent emotional harm, as well as preserving their dignity, their autonomy, and maintaining the therapeutic effectiveness. And in order to do this, this means that we have to really take a step back and think about how are we communicating with them and how can we maintain rapport. And thus, in order to do that, we can teach it. All that said, one of the main challenges you can really run into with this is misattunement. And what do I mean by misattunement? I mean subtle yet impactful disruptions in the rapport. So a really simple way to understand this is mistiming your intervention. And what do I mean by that? As physicians, we can often look in the health record, we can look at labs, we can look at imaging, we can say, this is the diagnosis, this is the treatment. But if you just walk into a room and tell a patient, this is what I'm going to do, they may or may not comply because they won't think that you listen to them, and they won't think that, even if you do understand, that you really understand what's going on. So you start to think about when you are presenting different information to patients. We also have mismatches of tone. We could certainly you could see a patient who's very clinically detached, a super depressed patient. And in that circumstance, you have to similarly tone down your volume, tone down your rate, tone down your body language. Probably come off as extremely, extremely formal. Or on the opposite end, a manic patient, where you might want to come off as really hyper, really high tone, really high volume, and less formal, more casual. We can also start to overlook patients' emotional cues, failing to notice subtle signs of distress, anxiety, discomfort, and even misinterpret them, thinking that a patient who's coming off as distressed, anxious, or discomforted is really just withdrawn and not interested, when in reality, they're actually depressed, anxious, or discomforted. From a clinical implications perspective, if we start to not really understand our patient's emotional response and not properly respond to it, this can increase the patient's distress, their emotional withdrawal, and their anxiety. And overall, this really weakens the therapeutic alliance, diminishes trust, and definitely could lead to a patient not complying with a treatment plan that might be best for them. And then this kind of gets into an ethical perspective on this, where that does to some degree undermine the patient's autonomy, because this might disregard the patient's preferences, their decisions, their emotional boundaries, and reduce their sense of agency. So for more of like a practical perspective, because this is kind of an abstract, what does this actually mean? And what it actually means is that we can teach rapport as a clinical skill, because it's something that is something you have to think about. It's something that we can thus teach. So how do we do this? The first thing is attuned listening and responsiveness. Active listening techniques, validating patients' emotional experiences, as well as temporal sensitivity, matching the intervention timing with patient's readiness, and using pauses in your speech so patients can reflect and process both what you said as well as what they said, as well as the meaning of that speech. And then we have nonverbal attunement and body coherence. And what I mean by that is aligning your body language, aligning your voice, and really just enhancing the connection through eye contact, tone, pitching, and pacing to really match what the patient is exemplifying and meet them where they're at. And then lastly, we have to reflect on what we're doing, self-assess and get feedback from peers and supervisors to refine our skills and maintain ethical standards. So those are my references. Thank you for listening to my presentation. Please let me know if you have any questions.
Thank you. I really enjoyed your talk. I think it's really applicable, not just in psychiatry, but for any physician practice. I was just wondering if you considered maybe countertransference when it comes to a physician and their approach to, taking care of patients.
Yeah, for sure. Countertransference is certainly really an underlying principle in all of this. And I should probably put that in the presentation. Thank you.
Well, that was quick. Thank you. Well, first of all, I want to thank you for presenting this, at our organization. I think sometimes we forget, why we're clinicians, physicians, and this is a really good feedback. I think not only for psychiatry, but for internal medicine, for family medicine, even surgeons. I mean, sometimes we just get wrapped up with the science, which we're having great presentations, don't get me wrong. But I'm glad you did this. The only thing I didn't like is you said for psychiatry. I think it's for being a good clinician. It should be for all of us.
Yeah.
And that was my 2 cents worth. Thank you.
No, I certainly appreciate that comment. When I was practicing this presentation this morning, I was like, I should have renamed this and just eliminated the for psychiatry part, because even though psychiatry might be a case example for this applies to everyone.
I enjoyed your talk. I noticed that your talk is suffering from all these talks where nothing is quoted in the 20th century. Now, let me ask you a question. Are you aware of Carl Rogers?
Yes, I am actually, because last time I presented this, you brought him up.
Well, okay, I did bring him up. Okay, well, that's good. So here's the question. Why didn't you, because the point is you're still making the same error. You are redefining a new thing called rapport. You're repackaging an old idea without recognizing the predecessor.
Yeah.
History is important. Just like what was just said before, this is important for physicians, but we stand on the shoulders of our predecessors. And what medicine in the world is happening right now is repackaging old ideas and new words where we're eliminating history. So I think it's important to look at actually deeply what Carl Rogers did and then see, okay, what we've done is we've taken it beyond. It is just not a repackaging of old ideas. But I appreciate your talk. I'm into this stuff. I was going to be a psychiatrist.
Yeah, no, I certainly appreciate the feedback. Thank you.
Rebrand.
A question, and yes, this does apply across all spheres. And just on a slightly humorous side, as an examiner for oral examiners, we have prepared a wonderful video, because you can't, when you've got a candidate in front of you, you said what? You have to have that same empathy and so on across all walks of life. How do you go about teaching this?
Yeah.
And what is the most effective way of doing it so people can, because it doesn't only apply to psychiatry, I don't think.
Yep. Yeah, and even though it doesn't only apply to psychiatry, I do think that this has deep interplay with psychiatry. So especially when we talk about those patient populations that are abnormal in regards to affect, personality disorders, etc. I think that at least in my school, as a second-year medical student, you start to learn about these disorders, and that's really the time that I would start to teach it, where it's, this is a disorder, and this is how you should respond to it through your body language, your tone, your speech, etc. And I think if you start teaching as a second year and just really expand the teaching, throughout third year, ideally you would teach it in every clerkship, but definitely at least in the psychiatry clerkship and hopefully family medicine clerkship, it can just be integrating the curriculum certainly more than it is now.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Please support our mission to improve quality of patient care through education. Join us, follow us, and share this content with family and friends.